Hi everyone, welcome back to our episode 3 of our series Masterclass in Battling Constipation, a Survivor's Guide. My name is Bimal Maharzan, a chronic constipation survivor, a GI health advocate, and the founder of God's Fair. After spending thousands of hours researching and experimenting to overcome my own chronic constipation to improve my gut health, I have created this series to shorten your path to recovery. And also, I founded God's Fair with a mission to empower every GI patient to live a high quality of life. So, join me in this series to explore strategies and insights to overcome our GI issues and live high quality of life. In our first episode, I shared my personal ordeal with constipation, my 7 year battle with constipation, how it started, and how it impacted deeply on my life. We talked about the early signs, the emotional toll, and my decision to take control of my whole health. In episode 2, we dived into the essentials of what constipation really means, its root causes, and tools such as understanding Bristol stool chart that helped to understand our GI health better. And today, in episode 3, our title is How I Cured My Constipation by Becoming a Scientist of My Own Body. We are going deep into how I use my own experiences to craft a methodological and evidence based approach to tackle my GI issues. We'll explore how tracking bowel movements can be a game changer and setting a solid foundation for experiments and adjusting our lifestyles progressively to achieve not only relief but a real health transformation. Plus, to make it fun, we'll get into some gamification strategies that made my goals exciting and achievable. Here is the quick preview of the chapters. And today's episode is packed with actionable insight. Chapter number 1 is about using bowel movements as a GI biomarker. And I'll talk about my journey that we start exploring by understanding the importance of monitoring bowel movements, understanding their characters, and using them to gauge our health. And chapter 2 is about establishing a baseline, the first step to better our gut health. So we will discover the critical steps of setting a baseline for gut health and how it serves as a foundation for any effective treatment plan. And third chapter is about running scientific experiments, starting with the basics and how to increase complexity. So we'll learn about systematic approach that I took, starting from simple changes and gradually increasing variables to pinpoint what influenced my gut health the most. And fourth chapter will be about overcoming challenges in my lifestyle habits. Changing habits is tough, but we'll discuss the obstacles I faced and how I managed to sustain new habits over time. And five, we'll talk about gamification, making health goals fun and achievable. Find out how turning health management into a game can significantly enhance motivation and make daily progress enjoyable. And finally, chapter 6, living a high performing life after chronic constipation. We'll talk about incredible changes that followed my recovery, clearer skin, more energy, and a new zest for life, leading up to the creation of God's Fair and my role in GI health. But before we begin, a quick disclaimer. The insights and strategies that I share are based on my personal experience and extensive research. They're a guide to help you and inspire you, but it's and not a substitution for clinical advice or clinical expertise. For any healthcare advice before you make a treatment plan or change your habits, please consult your healthcare provider. So only your healthcare provider can give you a tailored advice to your specific condition. So now let's get started and uncover how you can turn your struggles into a journey of discovery and empowerment. And also, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more empowering insights. Here we go. Let's begin with chapter number one. In this chapter, we'll discuss using bowel movements as a GI health biomarker, and I'll discuss about my journey using it. I genuinely believe bowel movement as a biomarker is underutilized and underappreciated. I find it, when used properly, extremely accessible and useful and objective tool to evaluate and monitor my GI health. In this chapter, let's double click more on about understanding what is a bowel movement biomarker, who should do it, why one should do it, and also talk about some criticisms and about it, and also how to overcome those criticisms or challenges. Let's begin. First of all, what is bowel movement as a biomarker? So observing and recording characteristic of bowel movements such as shape, color, frequency, smell, strain, pain, and other symptoms during the bowel movement. We can record those. And why it's helpful is it helps to pinpoint digestive issues, dietary triggers, and overall gut health. So it also provides insights into effectiveness of our dietary and lifestyle changes. And also studies have indicated stool characteristics can reflect gastrointestinal health diseases. For example, if you have IBD, IBS, the stool characteristic can actually say a lot about your disease. The way I used an app earlier, but app wasn't comprehensive enough, so I created own Google Forms and later Airtable Forms to record daily changes. What I did was using Bristol stool charts, shape, size, strain, satisfaction, the effort, pain, and the symptoms, and also I took picture of it. So that's how, and then when I made any changes, I refer to how my all of these variables are changing and getting better. And if it's getting better, I would continue changing my variables, which I'm going to talk about in running experiments. And then what it helped me was continuously improve and gamify it, which I'm going to talk about in chapter number 5. So I used Google Forms and later Airtable Forms to input all these details. And that made me life very easier. And second is usually start collecting and recording these whenever I have exacerbation of symptoms. That's when I started. And obviously, like any other patient, when the symptoms go away, I'm doing normally, there's no incentive to do about it. And that's one of the challenges, which I'm going to talk about next in chapter number 4. But I use consistently and accurately in order to get the accurate sense of my biomarkers. And then I'm a chronic constipation patient. I think and I believe if other patients also use, for example, IBS patients, IBD patients also use to record their bowel movements daily and observe and monitor the changes in the pattern and use Bristol stool charts to maintain the ideal stool or ideal bowel movement, it can be tremendously helpful. And the reason why I believe underutilized is because who wants to look back into your toilet bowl after you're done with it, right? It's kind of disgusting. But again, maybe that's one of the reasons why people don't do it because it's kind of disgusting to look at. But again, if you want to get better, this unpleasant feeling is a temporary feeling. We can always overcome that and we get used to it. And also number two, because I feel it's underutilized, is lack of awareness. And that's the reason why I'm creating this video to raise awareness that, hey, your bowel health can say a lot about your health, especially when you have GI issues. It can represent and actually give you a snapshot of your health. And why I feel it's underutilized is, again, it's high frequency, it's visual monitoring. It can be helpful for early detection, and it can also be for holistic health indicator because it can also say about hydration level, it's about what other dietary balances to talk about. So generally, I feel like bowel movement as a biomarker is underutilized, and let's change that and make it very useful for monitoring and recording our GI health. And obviously, some of the criticisms and are the following, and I can list 4. Number 1 is subjectivity. Number 2 is consistency. Number 3 is accuracy, and number 4 is privacy concerns. So about subjectivity. And when you look about Bristol chart type 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, please refer to my chapter number 2, where I discuss in detail about how to use Bristol chart in order to identify your stool and record as objectively as possible. So that's what. To remove that subjectivity, when people are aware of this objective evaluation tool, we can minimize that subjective and bring in more quantitative objectivity into it. So about consistency, I have forgotten taking a record. I have forgotten uh, about making observation. So it's only usual. But when we create a routine or habit of doing at it, we can create reminders and other digital tools to do that. So we can actually create a consistent habit and then create that consistency. Number three is accuracy. Yes, not all changes in bowel movement indicates a serious issue. And there are people who can have unnecessary anxiety because of it. I understand that. And hence, not only combining that with uh, the bowel movement, but also with the other symptom trackers or other holistic biomarkers can help to reduce that unnecessary anxiety. And also because of education and awareness, people can understand, okay, what is normal, what is deviations from normal. And again, having a bowel movement with a I think a little stronger smell, a little, some mucus or some strain, if it happens very rarely, once in a while, I don't think we need to be worried about. So that awareness is important, and we can definitely increase that accuracy and reduce that anxiety level through awareness. And four, we talk about privacy concerns, right? So okay, your bowel movement is a very private matter. And if you use tools, then you feel like, okay, this is personal health information getting hacked or lost or accessed by somebody else. But again, if we are creating the on using our notepads, using our own forms, or again, using any tool, digital tool, which says that the security is a priority, we can overcome that. And all of these is very useful when we present them to our healthcare provider so that when we meet our healthcare provider, we have objective data sets what happened based on our diet, how our stool changes, based on treatment law, how it responds, right? It can be a visual biomarker, daily visual biomarker. And obviously, I have want to summarize how we can overcome these limitations and criticisms, obviously by enhancing objectivity. For example, using Bristol Stewart chart, which is quite objective and standardized measures to ensure consistency in recording observations. And number two, to solve lack of consistency, we can create routine. So we can incorporate daily tracking into daily routines such as after breakfast or early in the morning or before we go to bed. So whatever our bowel movement routine is, and again, I understand for some people, there may not be an urge to go. And again, one of the ways of solving constipation is creating a schedule, and then we can pick the time, what works for us, and then we can do activities that increases or urge to go to a bowel movement. So after that particular routine, we can definitely measure it. So training routine is one. Third is like combining methods. Exactly. So we have things such as passive recording and active recording. Passive recording meaning, for example, I'm wearing this Apple Watch. It records steps. It's called sleep. It records, uh, records my resting heart rate and so on. So those are passive recording, which is happening continuously. The active recordings, such as the diet, the stool trackers, the hydrogen trackers, those are more active. So when we combine with all of those things, and then we create a definite time at an end of the day, a certain time, then we combine with other metrics and analyzing those. So that can also increase adherence of measuring bowel movements. And obviously, number four is education and awareness. I believe as a self-care routine, we can get educated about the bowel movement as a biomarker and measure it. So that's why we are creating this. I am creating this series. And five is we can leverage technology. So these are ways how we can use bowel movement as a biomarker. Second is we can understand what its utility are. Obviously, there are shortcomings and criticisms. So through awareness, through consistency, through education, through combining methods, and through leveraging technology and using objective methodologies, we can enhance the utility of bowel movement as a biomarker. So the reason why I want to talk about bowel movement as biomarker is I use my bowel movements as a compass or to gaze or a measurement tool to run my experiments. So it's a daily feedback mechanism. And I know in GI health, the actions we take may require longer time to respond. But in my experience, if I change something really simple, I can observe that change in my stool. So therefore, if there is a positive impact in my stool, I keep that change. And if it doesn't impact, I remove that. That's what that's why I want to talk about bowel movement as a biomarker. I hope you would give it a shot and record for yourself and see whether how it helps you to navigate the proactiveness or preventative nature of improving your GI health and reducing your GI symptoms. After saying that, let's move on to the chapter number 2, running experiments, starting with simple things and adding complexity of it. In this chapter, we are going to talk about prerequisite to running experiments. Obviously, I'm very thankful to my science and engineering background that I'm able to understand the scientific process. So in scientific experimentations, there are generally two categories of it. Now, one is experiments at the population level, and second one is experiments at the individual level, which is called sample size of one. So experimentations at the population level requires large number of individuals. So generally what happens is there is a hypothesis to be made, and then to run that experiment, one particular variable is tested on large number of people and data is collected and analyzed. So it's mostly about the discrete data sets for large number of people. Whereas in sample size of one, experimentation at the individual level is about taking data points continuously for a longer period of time in that particular person. In this case, I use bowel movement as a biomarker and use that as experimentation on my own body. So this is sample size of one. The benefits are many. Number one is the data is in the real world environment where I live. Second is I get the continuous set of data which helps me recognize the patterns. Third is I can easily detect cause and effect with things I make change and the bowel movement changes or stool characteristics that has happened. So these are really useful in understanding and running sample size of one. I think the challenges to run sample size of one experiments is obviously education. We don't have standardized tools, and it's very difficult to run the experiments in a real world environment. However, with a bit of knowledge, a bit of understanding the science, a bit of understanding the technology, we can definitely run our experiments on the sample size of one. As I mentioned, I'm very thankful to my science background and engineering background. Therefore, before you run any experiments, you know that we need to establish a baseline. After we establish a baseline, then what we do is we gather data for the baseline and they form a hypothesis and then run experiments and finally analyze data. And then if it works, keep it. If it doesn't work, lose it and try some other experiment. And also, I want to share with you my baseline data. When I started using Bristol Stool chart and started recording in Google Forms, using Google Forms, for example, shape, size, color, strain, satisfaction level, and effort and time, what I noted was my size was generally a larger diameter, or sometimes even the ball shaped. So that's indicated that I'm constipated. Number two is sometimes it's dark brown and sometimes yellowish. And when I had hemorrhoids or fissure because of the large diameter of stool, there was also blood in the stool. And the blood was always dripping on top of the stool with bright red. So that meant that the bleeding happened on the lower part of the rectum, not in the large intestine or small intestine or stomach. So that's why I learned to understand the meaning of different colors. and strain, how much effort I need to put it to really push it. It was generally high. Sometimes I clenched my teeth like this, and also pain. Pain was insufferable at times, and obviously the effort that I need to put in and time. I would spend 20, 30 minutes in the bathroom trying to poop, and I would just get it and just straining out. Sometimes tears would roll down through my cheeks. So that was really painful, and that was my baseline data. And also baseline data about the diets and lifestyles and habits. So my baseline data was I wasn't in a sleeping in a regular schedule. It was up and downs. That's one. I had high stress because at that point in time, my financial status was just up and down roller coaster as well. And I took a financial decision that uh, not only, how do I put it more politely, is not only reduced my income, but also it reduced my savings and dipped into my wife's earning as well. So that was causing me stress. And third thing was I was living very sedentary lifestyle, meaning I was never been an exercise person. I wouldn't exercise heavily because I grew up weak. That's what I was told. So my form of exercise was through movement. When I was in Nepal, so the movement I would get was a lot of walking, doing chores, and walking stairs up and down. But when I moved to the United States, and especially Boston during winter, I'm not used to that harsh winter. Hence, I wouldn't just go out for a walk or exercise. And second, even the mandatory chores that you do for buying groceries and everywhere, you used car. So walking was a little less. So sedentary lifestyle was higher. And also in terms of food and nutrition, eating more processed food, standard American diet with low fiber. And third was my hydration level was really low. So I wrote in my book, Living Constipation Free, that so hydration has a vicious cycle. Whenever you feel thirsty and you ignore the urge for drinking, that's thirst, the body gets acclimatized for not getting water. And that's the vicious cycle. But when you start drinking water, and if you drink more water, the body wants more water. So that's the virtuous cycle. So at that point in time, when I started running experiment, I started recording all of those things: my hydration level, my nutrition, my stool. Remember in episode 2 or 1, I talked about give you a framework that body is a machine, input, processing, and output. I started recording all of those. And then I realized, okay, this is now I have a baseline data. So what can I do next? And my next experimentation was inspired by my simple observation. Even my hypothesis was really simple through that observation. So let's talk about that next running experiments, in which I'm going to talk about how to start simple and then keep on adding complexity. In this chapter of running experiments, so we are going to talk about how I start with simple variable and progressively add on to more complex variable and still use bowel movement as a biomarker to create an iterative process and eventually lead to success. So after collecting the baseline data, it helped me understand the root causes. For generally, when I learned that the constipation can be caused by three general categories. One is is more of the lifestyle causes, second is physiological causes, and third is the neurological causes. In my case, what I learned was my root case was mostly lifestyle related because I did not have any other symptoms. And also lifestyle, I could say, because I also didn't have the routine. I would get bowel movement any time of the day, anywhere, the urge to go, but it's just hard to come out. So therefore, some of the things that I have was maybe sometimes the muscle part about it, but that also is because of poor lifestyle because I could tell from my stool. So before going a test for more like pelvic function disorders or neurological disorders, the easiest thing observation came from this experiment came from my first observation when I looked back at my stool, and I was surprised by it. I found undigested food particles in my stool. When I ate even a peas at times, I would find peas in my stool. Sometimes carrots, sometimes spinach, even when I was eating vegetables. What does that mean? That means I was not chewing properly, right? So there is a saying in Indian subcontinent, don't make your intestines do the job of your teeth. And I was literally making my intestines work really, really hard. So first hypothesis was, if I chew properly, I would not get undigested food in my stool. And let me run that experiment. And I started chewing it. Even chewing it. The reason in this modern world, especially when we have so many things going on, we eat while walking, we eat while talking, we eat while working, right? This chewing part, we forget to chew. And I was one of them. I was forgetting to chew. Then to get the habit of chewing, I have to consciously put effort of chewing it. Literally today when I eat, now it has become more autonomous. I can talk and chew and I can grind and I can chew a lot. But before that became a habit, I had to put a constant effort, sit down, just stare at my food and just keep my head down, just eat that, eat and eat, chew, chew, chew. And some of my friends even make fun of me that they should make a video out of me eating the food because I'm so into the food and it looks like I'm enjoying my food. And yes, I started enjoying food after I started chewing and getting rid of all the bad habits that we have in our modern habits while not chewing it. And the results were simple. I started absorbing less, uh, almost zero undigested food. And also my stool diameter started reducing a bit. And that's when I realized chewing is so important. Before that, most of us know, or some of us don't know that chewing starts in chewing starts. What I mean by that is Dyson starts in the mouth. And chewing is absolutely important for digestion. The reason why is, and here's the scientific reason why, and I can list a couple of 3 or 4 reasons. Number one is when we chew, our mouth releases an enzyme called amylase, which helps to break down the carbohydrate and starch in our mouth. And because of the chewing, the surface area in which the enzyme can encode or assimilate with that food increases. Therefore, chewing is super important. That's number one. Number two reason is it gives signal to our stomach to release gastric juices. So gastric juices is important to balance the pH in our stomach while digesting it. And when it is digested in the food, the absorption in the small intestine and the large intestine increases. And number three, it encourages mindful eating. What that means, we are not gulping down. When we are not gulping down, we are not eating excess food. It slows down our eating process and it gives adequate time for our gut to signal our brain that we are satiated. So we do not overeat it. And therefore, and when you are not overeating it, it's a less food for our stomach to digest, less food to pass through. And when the undigested food, large amount of undigested food pass through, obviously it becomes difficult to pass through the digestive tract, and hence simple act of chewing was my first experiment that I ran. And I started observing the more a little softer than before. It did not go away. I would not say that this chewing solved everything, but it was a starting point. And the next variable that I added was, as I said earlier, my stool was drier side. Whenever it was a thick diameter, it has cracks. What that means was I didn't have enough water in my body. And another signal for lack of water or dehydration in my body is I had drier skin. So even in winter, I would have more drier skin than I know the white particles on my skin. Second was there are a lot of pimples on my face. Now there are some remaining dark spots after the pimples went away, but my forehead was full of pimples, here and cheeks, and these are small moles. These are not pimples, but the lot of pimples on my face and acne on my face, and that also signified that hey, there is something wrong with the gut, and I'm dehydrated. So, but also the the very simplistic advice that we get from people: if you are constipated, just drink more water. But I learned from my experiment that it's not that simple. So when somebody says to you, drink more water, let's do at least 2 liters of water. What does that even mean? So the devil's are in the details. Are we drinking gulping our 2 liters of water as soon as we wake up? What we're going to Are we going to drink before meal, after meal, when? The simple rule of thumb is that you drink when you are thirsty. But in this case, I wasn't thirsty at all because my body was used to not drinking water. So what I started doing was sip through the water. For example, every hour drink uh, about let's say a glass of water, or to compensate more, I would just drink 1.5 hours water. And also another thing that I started doing was as soon as I get up, I started drinking 2 cups of water with the salt on in it. So that starts the hydration process because the body is completely dehydrated because after 8 or 7 or 6 hours on, on bed after sleep is completely dehydrated. So that kicked off my hydration process. However, I realized that hydration wasn't enough because tools were getting softer for sure, but still had larger in size. But when it was still larger in size, it wasn't impacting my hemorrhoids or fissures, and I could occasionally still see the blood. Blood sometimes became bright red to pinkish red. That means my wound was not healed at all, and that was the output that I was measuring. And that's bowel movement as a biomarker, stool characteristics, and so on. But also start with input. Now, after input, one more thing which I want to increase was the fiber intake. So what I realized was, so fiber has two types of fiber, soluble and insoluble fiber. And insoluble fiber are the prebiotics that are food for the gut microbiome that also creates the bulk into it. And the soluble fibers helps in absorption of the nutrients. And I wasn't getting both of them. So I started increasing my fiber intake, drinking more water with the fiber. And fiber helped to even create more thirst and also help to cleanse my digestive tract. So my observation was when I started increasing more fibrous food, chewing really properly, drink adequate water, fibrous meaning whole food, meaning more fruits, more vegetables, more nuts. And I reduced the following. I reduced the red meat for a while. I reduced the unprocessed foods. I stopped eating white bread, pastas, pizza. I realized it's a poison for me, although I love pizza, so it's delicious. But if I eat a little bit more pizza, which is refined flour with the cheese, I know I learned that I would get bleeding next couple of days and my stool characteristics would start changing. So three variables now, chewing, drinking water, and adding fiber. And progressively, I realized that my stool started becoming softer and softer and softer. One day, it reached to the ideal shape of type 4, which is snake shape, brown in color, and evacuated completely as soon as I got up in the morning. That was amazing experience. I was so happy to get that. Obviously, it's a simplified version, 1, 2, and 3. I did much more. As I said earlier, there are other lifestyle variables as well, which I learned was if my sleeping pattern is random, my bowel movement is also very random. So when I tuned my sleeping pattern, which is also tuning the circadian rhythm of it, my urge to for a bowel movement started becoming more predictable. It started becoming in the morning. For stress, what I started doing was I started meditating again. And 2 years ago, I even went to the 10-day Vipassana meditation retreat. That helped a lot. Now it helped a lot. And also, I started doing yoga and different poses of yoga. There are different yoga poses, which also helps to in pelvis function disorders, getting the abdomen muscles and muscles more elastic and tight depending on what you need. So I started doing that. And one more thing which I was doing was I started running. And even I became almost an athlete, which means I started running half marathons more regularly. And that's a huge change from someone which I was before. I didn't used to exercise at all. I remember in 2016, about October, November time, okay, I need to start exercising. I did a 7 minute hit exercise and my back hurt for 2 weeks and I couldn't even walk. That bad I was. From there to running 7 miles barefoot or running 16 miles in 2 hours and 10 minutes. That was amazing fit for me. And that was a sea change, I would say, about myself. So, and when I even started learning, right, when I had less than 2,000 steps, I would find it difficult in the next day during the bowel movement. So when I started increasing more than 3,000, when I started running more for like 10,000 steps or doing more aerobic exercises, the bowel movement started becoming more regular. And obviously, I had to stop running too hard before my hemorrhoids and the fissures were healed. But after it was healed, I could run more. These days, I stopped running, but I still do HIIT, I still meditate, I still do exercise and drink a lot of water and eat a lot of healthy food. And I do intermittent fasting. So those are the lifestyle changes I made. Then I learned something extraordinary while running those experiments. So what are the pillars of health? So four pillars of health are food, sleep, movement, and and hydration. Those are four pillars of health. And in even hydration, what I want to add is for a softer stool, what works better than drinking water or complements drinking water is eating water. What that means is food, eat food that has more water content. For example, green leafy vegetables, fruits. Even nuts don't have it, but it helps you drink water. But all those watermelons, so papayas, kiwis that has more water content, cucumbers. So eating water helps a lot. So one more thing which I haven't talked about is about using laxatives. Most of us do take laxatives, and I shied away from taking pharmaceutical laxatives because if I had to, I would take it, but I wanted to try more uh, food-based, lifestyle change-based, and even the home remedies for laxatives. So I'm going to talk more about that. And second, I also want to talk to you about tests that I went through. I didn't have to do many of tests. I obviously went through my primary care doctor, gastroenterologist, done colonoscopies and all. So they didn't find anything else. What that meant was it was mostly the lifestyle issues and mostly stress-related issues. So I worked on that. And again, progressively, my bowel movement started better. And then my game was the streaks. How long can I continue the streak of getting the ideal bowel movement? So which I will talk about gamification in a bit. So I understood about these four pillars of health that I want to improve it. Even in food, I started learning more and more, going deeper, understanding what is fiber, what different types of fiber. Second was what is metabolic health, what is going to increase my energy. Another thing which I started going deeper was what is probiotics, which fermented food had is the role of fat, why fat is useful, and what is not useful, how much is useful, the role of fasting, and what is feasting. So those are the concepts I started getting learn and implement these things in my experimental iterative process. There are many challenges when changing lifestyle and habit, not only about running experiments, but also changing habits. And where I empathize with you all patients, right? It's easy to give advice, but it's difficult to implement. And there's the gap between information and action. And we're obviously humans, and humans have moods, social obligations, and lack of awareness, the many more things, and creates a complex soup of challenges. And here are some of the challenges I faced, and I learned that number one thing, building habit is hard. And when talking about things like fiber, it's difficult to accurately measure. The other thing is changes are not instantaneous. And four, relying on memory doesn't work. And there are additional challenges, which are social and environmental factors, emotional and psychological barriers, and information overload. So let's go one by one and give you a brief overview about these challenges and how to resolve. So habit building is hard. For example, drinking water, as it sounds as simple as that, but drinking consistently is difficult. So therefore, keeping an achievable goal or creating an environment to make sure we have that habit. I started putting water on my bedside so that I started drinking water immediately. Before I did that, I would need to go to the kitchen or somewhere to get up. So there's a friction. I just wouldn't drink it as soon as I get up in the morning. So simple act of putting water bedside, that's an environmental change I did. And that led me to drink more water. And second was, again, after you build a habit, it becomes autonomous. But before that, the being mindful to remember, and because there is no organic trigger to respond to the stimuli, so like thirst or hunger or urge, what I started need to do was mindful. Okay, I want to start in the morning, drink water as I get up. I want to do things that creates urge to go to the bathroom. Then I need to put the knee up. Those are simple stuff, but being mindful about that. what I did was I started using triggers and reminders and so on. That's how it became, and that became a habit. And also I started using was called chain of actions. For example, as I drink water, I go to the bathroom, the knee up. So that created the domino impact effect. And obviously that made me change habit, one small habit at a time. Then I keep on adding more and more habits to build on, pile on to, to create a domino effect. And I also observed that while running experiments, we want to be as reductive and as granular as possible. But for example, measuring something like fiber is difficult. Then what I realized was I don't need to be absolutely accurate to the milligram. The ballpark figure is fine. Another thing which I learned was, so I wish changes happen instantly, but these changes take time. For me, it took me months and multiple months to do that. However, the small increment changes in the effort that I need to put in, the strain I need to put in, the size of the smell of the color of the poop, that was the incremental changes was my compass that I'm improving. But sometimes frustrating that it doesn't happen binary 0 to 1. It's not a switch. It takes time. That was frustrating. So also having that awareness of setting realistic expectation helped, and the regular monitoring and the gradual changes that okay, I'm generally in the right direction. That mindset helped to not get discouraged by long change cycle. Another thing which initially was starting was, hey, I will record all of these things keeping in my memory and jotting down in the night. But that doesn't work because our memory focuses more on the recent events. So there is a recency bias. So therefore, relying on memory doesn't work. This is exactly another reason why relying on memory to share what you ate, what you slept, what you drink, all the lifestyle variables, and all the treatment adherence plan when you meet your doctor doesn't work because our mind focuses more recency bias and then wants to generalize based on recency bias on the past activities. Therefore, jotting it down in a journal works. So that's what I use, jot down. And obviously, when I'm doing all of those changes, uh, environmental, social factors, like sometimes the Thanksgivings, the Christmases, and other festivals come along. Therefore, you go to different places for for feasting and food and dinners where you don't control a lot of these variables. That's from the challenges. But again, what I started doing was I was sharing where I am at, and therefore my friends will understand. And also while eating it, I would prepare for feasting by fasting in the morning so that I don't overload my system. So those are the systems that I have learning. And obviously, not every day is the same. Sometimes the mood is high, sometimes mood is low. The emotional and psychological barriers, like sometimes, what am I even doing it? Why is it taking so long? Let me not start do it. And sometimes I fall off the wagon. That means my poop is getting better. Or I realize that, oh, such I have done it. And then I fall back to the default mode of eating standard American diet. And then I get the blood in the stool again. It's difficult to poop. And then I start these habit changes again. So falling off the wagon and because of psychological, factors such as I've done it way sooner than I should have celebrated. So that also helped was a challenge. Then I realized that hey, at least I need to go for a longer period of time before I get. So I made a game out of that. Another part was which I think many people recognize this, the information overload. Even this piece of information sometimes become too much information, right? Too much information meaning talking about poop, talking about food, all in one particular sentence. That's going to be too much information. And also the validity of the content in the internet, in the food, and also sometimes contrary information. Some say fiber is good, some say fiber is bad, some say fat is good, some say fat is bad. In all of these cacophony of noises, what's the right signal to put on? And that's become really challenging as well. And for me, what I looked for was, again, I did something, I implement on myself and keep what works, what doesn't work. For example, even with diet also, there are different types of diets, right? There is carnivore diet, there is vegan diet, there is vegetarian diet, there is a fish only diet, there is paleo diet, and so many other diets, a Mediterranean diet, so many diets. But I don't want to fall into any of these things. And I respect people who have this, whatever works for them. For me, omnivore diet works with a lot of plant-based food, and also I like eating meat, so that works for me, and I design my life around that. So again, let's not get bogged down by information overload. Get from credible sources, experiment by yourself, keep what works for you without getting into the ideology of any different types of things. Keep what works for me, and that was a mindset. I will keep what works for me. I'll experiment for myself, and again, I'll only go for more credible sources. And I'll listen to people who are more experiential, not only just spitting out intellectual things from second-hand information. That's the reason even my podcast and information, I want to focus on my experiential learning and sharing so that it's not something very intellectual or happens, it's just coming out of passing, picking the information, synthesizing and passing along to you. It's actually gone through my body and the information is passed on through an experience. So for now, what I've given to you is the framework to think around personalization. And I've talked about the power of experimentation, personal experimentation. And when you collect the sample size of one for a longitudinal data, continuous data for a long period of time, you start observing patterns. What works, what doesn't work. Sometimes, for some people, when it's just eating the beans or even cauliflower can get bloating. For example, does not. Some people, like if you're lactose problem with some lactose from drinking milk may produce a lactose intolerance, whereas you substitute that for yogurt of yogurt, it doesn't have that same impact. So experiment for yourself, personalize it. And that takes me to one more chapter that I want to talk about, which is gamification, which is making health goals fun and achievable so that it helps me improve create the momentum of my habit changes. And when we talk about gamification, for me, it's quite simple. I use my bowel movement as a biomarker, and my goal is to get type 4, the snake shape, brown in color, without strain, within 4 minutes, as soon as I wake up early in the morning. That's the simple goal. And that goal has high frequency. I can observe that goal visually every morning. Now, how do I achieve that? And of course, I draw from many psychological texts, many habit building texts, and also draw inspiration from unusual places. For example, I saw someone telling me that the creative writers, so writing is a creative process, but instead of making it about creative process, they made turn into a blue collar process. What that means is they draw a line on the wall every day and they continue drawing it. And their goal is to just make sure that how many continuous streak of lines they can draw on the wall. And every morning they walk up, their simple goal is to draw one more line. So therefore, they wrote a ton. I forgot the name of those writers, but that's where I draw inspiration from. Think, okay, let me just simplify this. The activities that I do, for example, stretching, the running, yoga, meditation, it's not per se about those meditation, but it's about continuing the streak. And that helped me a lot. And obviously, I want to unpack the little bit of science behind this and tell you about what are different components of gamification. For example, there are generally 4 steps. Number one is setting clear and achievable goals. Number two is tracking progress. And number three is creating reward systems. And number four is iterating with adjusting and improvement. As I said before, setting clear and measurable goals. As soon as I get up, I have bowel movement, which has snake in shape, brown in color, no strain, effortless in 5 minutes, no other symptoms of blood or anything. That was a clear, visible goal that I can see every day. And using that as a compass on how close am I to that. And therefore, I modify my diet, exercises, the input, the processing, and output. And that allowed me to measure the gap between my goal and where I am at. And I used that to track my progress. As I told earlier, I used Google Forms and later Airtable Forms to start measuring how much I take. And my goal is to every in one variable reduce. For example, I want to stay less time in the in in the toilet. I want to strain less. So what is enabling me to do that? Yes, drinking water in squat position, exercising, eating a lot of fiber, fermented food, and taking fats, also fasting. So what are those variables? So I track progress. And another, for me, it's two reward systems. Number one is initially, before it became a habit, I use a simple mind hack. What that means is, for example, I went for running. I continued running. As soon as I got back, I took a small spoon of honey and ate it and gave me a sweet taste. And that's a reward system. Our mind loves sweet things, but I didn't want to eat any other junk, but also I don't want to overload my body with a lot of sugar, but I simply ate a spoon of raw organic honey so that it tricks my mind, okay, I did something good, which rewarded me. And another reward is quite visual. So with two visual rewards. One is obviously my shape of stool is closer to snake shape. But another very clear visual is I want to continue the streak. So the streak increases and I don't want to break that streak. And longer it gets, the better I feel that I can watch it visually. So that was a reward system I built into it. And obviously, fourth point, I adjust and improve. Now, adjust and improve meaning when I start eating fat in empty stomach, that one of the experiments I turned. For example, I ate sometimes ghee, sometimes coconut oil, but after a certain point of time, I discontinued that because I saw less impact of that. So again, that created the feedback loop for me and ultimately setting that clear, measurable goals. And while doing that, it helped me achieve my goals. For example, obviously it helped me create my morning routine. As soon as I get up, stretch, drink salt water in squat position, and trigger a bowel movement, and and evacuate in a squat position. That's what helped me develop my morning schedule. Number two, dietary adjustments. When I eat standard American diet with less fiber or junk food, if I start eating burger or pizza for a couple of days, it could show in my stool that it will get bigger. I'll have to strain more. So even before it gets worse, I can recalibrate my diet. So it helped me in dietary adjustments. Number three is mindful eating. I told you chewing is absolutely important. And when I start to correlate between chewing and my bowel movement, I it helped me to set my tone for mindful eating and enjoy and savor all the food that I eat. And four is physical activity. Remember, I told you earlier, one of the causes for me was sedentary lifestyle. But I wasn't an athlete. I didn't exercise. But slowly and steadily, this reward system, this gamification helped me to improve my physical activity. For example, when I started running, I started measuring the miles that I could run, the speed I could run, the regularly how regular I could run, and how that impacts my bowel movement. That was amazing. That feedback loop and helped me become an athlete. I ran 60 miles, which I never done it in my life. So it was a great reward system of feeling of achievement. And also number five was stress management. I started feeling lighter. I feeling happier. No anger, no frustration, but I can observe what's happening. Obviously, different meditation techniques help, but again, the quality of life increased without stress. And this simple mindset of obviously experimentation, pairing that with gamification, helped me a lot to build the momentum and create the success. So I started around late 2018, early 2019. It took me about a year to set this momentum. By 2021, I was living constipation free, and I wrote a book as well called Living Constipation Free, documenting all of my experience put together. And that writing a book process was also converting my frustrations into celebration because I had to share that with everybody else so that I could shorten path for other people. And this lead me to talk about one final thing, which is living a high performing life after chronic constipation. So one of the mindsets that helped me think about living a high quality life is how do I view my identity in my life? Am I a patient? Am I the one who worries about what I eat, what I poop, or constantly stressed about and be very angry, frustrated all the time? No, I refuse to do that. So my dream has been about trying to be a writer, entrepreneur, creator, builder, and so on. So my life when I suffered was stopping me from being that. Hence that, okay, the current quality of life doesn't align with where I want to go, where my identities are, that I want to create, or the dream that I have. So that was also the mindset that helped me having a bigger mission in life and for about myself. So that was crucial. So I recommend everybody to find something bigger than yourself because it otherwise it becomes monotonous. Why am I doing this? We ask a lot of questions like that. I did as well. But when I found the purpose, it made me inspired to change everything that I had to in order to build the foundation for the quality of life. And I have been successful in living that. Number one, the very visual was my pimples went away. Number two, I had more energy. Number three is my smiles come back. I smiled more. And obviously now I even started Sphere, which is about building a GI platform for patients for self-care and clinical navigation. And from survivor to being an advocate for GI health and serving other patients. And this, I find it extremely satisfying, gratifying, and privileged to have this opportunity. So, yes, I have suffered, but that suffering should not be my identity. My identity should be about thriving, thriving in life. So, when I started seeing the result of it, I was able to transform myself. And now I am living a highly productive life, highly performing life, high performing life, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and also socially. That is possible. And that is possible only when you take charge of your health. I take charge of my health. And obviously, want to make great things in life and create identities for ourselves. Now we have come to the end of our episode 3. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to my story where I cured my constipation, becoming scientist of my own body. I also recommend you to become the scientist of your own body. And for a short summary, number one, you can use bowel movement as a biomarker. Number two, set baseline data so that you know where you're at. Third, start running experiments. When you start running experiments, think about the framework: input, processing, and output. Start with the input, and even in that input, start with a simple variable. For example, I started with chewing, and then I used bowel movement as a biomarker, the compass, and my goal was to get into getting snake shape, brown in color, without strain and pain, without any symptoms. That was my goal, and I used gamification techniques to build momentum. And also briefly talk about obstacles. And when you fall off the momentum, be kind to yourself. Remember that we are humans, and when we make mistakes, we have our moods, we have our stresses and external factors that sometimes makes it difficult to do something. Be kind and be able to forgive yourself. I did as well. I fall off the wagon many times, but I forgive myself, and I restarted again because the prize at the end worth it. The prize is to live high performing life, not just the life full of suffering, but high performing, high productive life. And we talk about that as well. So now I pass it on to you. Live a high performing life and take charge of your own health. And also in the next episode, that what we are talking about is navigating the complex medical system. And any one of you who live in the United States or in the Western world navigating this is extremely challenging. Who are the right specialists? How to navigate insurance? And what are tests I need to take? And how do I advocate for myself for the right medical care when I need it? So we are going to talk all about that. So stay tuned for episode 4. And thank you so much for watching in. I need your help. I need your help so that it can reach to many more people. And the simple thing that you can do, you can like, you can subscribe, you can share, and obviously give feedback, comment. That will help us to improve, help me to improve this content and make it more useful to everyone. Let's make it our mission to become scientists of our own body, take charge of our own health, and also help other patients live a highly fulfilling life. Thank you so much. Have a great day, evening, night, wherever you are. Thank you so much.